Again, today we'll begin with 3.4, and 3.4 is slope and the rate of change. So the slope of the line is basically they try to see if you can find the changes in the change in y over the change in x. So basically the slope of any line is this item right here, which is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So we say for any slope is basically the changes in y over the changes in x, or you will hear me say later, the rise over the run. So basically all you do is you try to ask yourself from any given point, do we go up or down? And then do we go to the left or the right? The rise meaning either you go up or down, and the run will be left or right. And the reason why we cannot, x2 cannot be equal to x1 is because if the denominator, if x2 is the same as x1, then the denominator will be 0. And if there is the denominator equal to 0, it will be undefined. For now, for us, if the denominator is equal to 0, it will be the undefined slope, and we will mention more about the undefined slope in a bit. Okay, so our goal or our objective in 3.4 is if we give you any point, if we give you 0.1 and 0.2, can you find the slope? Can you find the rate of change between the 2 points? Okay, and the rate of change is basically the rise over the run. So there are 4 type of slope that you will see in our class. There are 4 type of slope, which is we will have a positive slope. And if we want to identify the positive slope, this is what I tell my student is, if you were to walk from left to right, if you were to travel from left to right, and when you hit this line, as you can see from left to right, when you hit the red line, this thing will keep on increasing from left to right. And if it's increasing from left to right, we say that this is a positive slope. So the red line that we have here is your positive slope. So that's one type of slope, which is from left to right increasing, then it will be a positive slope. Vice versa, if it's from left to right and you decreasing, if it's left to right and you decreasing in terms of this blue line, you keep on going down, then we call that this is a negative slope. So basically ask yourself, if I walk from left to right, and when I touch this line, whatever the line I have, if I keep on climbing up the mountain from left to right, then that will be my positive slope. If I keep on going down like ski, then it's a negative slope, okay? So that's easy to identify, right? From left to right, going up, positive. From left to right, going down, negative slope, okay? The other 2 is a unique one, which is if we were to have this line, if we were to have this yellow line, and if we were to walk on this from left to right, you can see that on this yellow line, when you touch this yellow line, you do not increase, none do you decrease. Basically, this is a constant item, which is a constant platform. And if it's a constant platform, you don't increase and you don't decrease, we say that this is a 0 slope. So 0 slope is basically a horizontal line. You walk from left to right, you don't increase, incline, or you do not decrease. Okay. And lastly, the 4th one, which is the undefined slope. An undefined slope is basically a vertical line. And if you look at this item, this is what I tell my students is, if you were to stand on this orange line, if you were to stand on this orange line, you can see that you cannot stand on this, which is a vertical line. If you stand on it, you will be free fall, right? And if you free fall, which is an undefined slope, basically there's no slope here. It's basically a vertical line straight down. You cannot stand on it, you know, without any string or line pulling you up, okay? So looking at this thing here, this is your typical, or this is your only 4 slope you have. You have a positive slope, a negative slope, a 0 slope, and an undefined slope, okay? So question with this four different kinds of slope we have: a positive, negative, or zero slope, and undefined. So just remember, horizontal line, zero slope; vertical line, undefined slope. Okay, and we mention more about undefined slope in the next slide, but that is your typical slope. Those are your four slope that you have in this section 3.4. So let's take a look at example. Let's say if they were to ask you, if they were to give you this item, and they ask you to find the slope of the line that passing through this given point. So they give you 2 points. They give you point, the first point 8, 3, and the second point -4, 2. Now they ask you, if we were to have this 2 point, what is the slope of the line that passing through this 2 point? To find the slope of the line, for reminder, this is your formula for the slope of the line, which is m equal to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And to find the slope, all you need to do is plug it in your y1, y2, x1, x2. So how do we know which one is y1, y2, and vice versa, which one is x1, x2? Basically, all you do is whatever you see first, that is your first point, we say that that is your x1, y1. Remember, to come up with a point, we need an x and y all in pair. The x comes first, the y comes second, which is my x1 is 8, my y1 is 3. And vice versa, if that's the first line, the first point, the second point will be x2, y2. And if you look at this item, we got the 4 items we needed to find the slope of this line. All we need to do is plug in the y, which is, again, y2 is my 2, minus y1 is 3, which is 2 minus 3, and plug in my x, which is -4 minus 8. So everybody see where my x1, y1 versus x2, y2. And reminder, your x will always be your denominator and your y will always be your numerator. The changes in y over the changes in x. So question in where my number come from?
Shouldn't 3 first 3 minus 2?
If you do that, if you do the 3 minus the 2, you have to do the 8 minus a -4. So basically, whatever you identify, if your 3 is y2, then your 8 is x2. So it's up to you. It's just that whatever you identify the first item, the bottom number have to be the first item too. So if you say 3 minus 2, you have to say 8 minus a -4. And yes, it's the same.
Okay.
As you can see right here, and I just want to keep it consistent, whatever I see first, that will be my x1, y1. Whatever I see second will be x2, y2. So if you want the first item to be x2, y2, that's up to you. It's fine, because if you look at this item here, do you agree that 2 take away 3 will give me a -1? And a -4 and a -8, that will give me same sign. I need to add them, which is -12. And -1 over -12, a negative over a negative will become a positive. So if you do the other way, if you say, wait, what if I do the other way? If you did the other way, you know 3 minus 2, that will equal to 1. That's easy enough, right? And if you do 8 minus a -4, and again, what is a negative and a minus? What does the double negative do? Well, double negative is the same as 8 plus 4. And again, 8 plus 4 will give you 12. Therefore, your slope will be 1 divided by 12. As you can see, it's the same as you have right here, 1 over 12. So regardless of how you do it, regardless of which one you use, it's just that whatever you use first, the x have to be first, okay? Anybody see what Will asked, or anybody see how that the slope is the same regardless of which one you use as an x and which one you use as in, x1, y1, and x2, y2. But like I say, for me, I just want to keep it consistent. And ladies and gentlemen, look at this thing here. We can see that this is a positive because double negative, negative over negative is positive, which is this is a positive slope, okay? And if you look at this item, right? If you look at B, and I want to point out one thing, the reason why I give you B is make sure that when you plug in your formula is the same, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But make sure that when you plug it in, the value have to be negative. Again, the formula is y2. For me, y2 is 11 minus, that is my formula, minus, and the value for y1 is a negative 9. So I have to put a negative 9 here. Don't just put 11 minus 9. That is the careless mistake a lot of students do, is they just say 11 minus 9. You have to make sure that 11 minus the value for y1 is negative 9, so you put in a negative 9, okay? So everybody see where my 11 minus a negative 9 come from. 11 is here, negative 9 is here. The formula is a minus, so 11 minus negative 9. And similarly, that is my y2 minus y1. And my x2, which is negative 6, like I say, if I use the 11 first, I have to use the negative 6 first. I have negative 6 minus a negative 3. So, you know, the other way that I tell my students, just imagine that your ordinate pair, instead of horizontal, the ordinate pair instead of horizontal is vertical this way, right? Negative 6 comma 11 is basically 11 like this. So, you know, however you want to see, make sure that you know that, again, whichever you use first for the y, you have to use the x, that x as a first, okay? And the reason why I mentioned this is because the double negative and a negative, this thing become a positive, which is 11 plus 9. And a double negative become a positive, which is negative 6 plus 3. 11 plus 9 is easy. 11 plus 9 is 20. Negative 6 plus 3 will give you a negative 3. As you can see, this is your negative slope. One thing about slope is do not give them a decimal. And also do not give them a mixed number. Whatever your fraction is, that is your slope. Okay, if it's negative 1,000 over negative 2, then you not negative 2. Negative 1,000 over negative 3, you just say 1,000 over 3. Okay, so whatever the fraction is, even though it's an improper fraction, if they ask you for the slope, just give it the way it is. And again, if you can reduce it, then you reduce it. In this case, both of the item I have, I cannot reduce them. So therefore, A is a positive slope because it's positive 1 over 12. And B is a negative slope because it's a negative 20 over 3. And as you can see, as long as one of them is negative, the whole thing is negative. So that's why we have a negative 20 over 3. So first of all, question between A and B, how did I took this number? How did I took this ordinate pair? I have two ordinate pair. The first ordinate pair here, the second ordinate pair here. How did I took this ordinate pair to the right to this slope? Any question? Okay. If you don't have a question, let's take a look at C. And if you take a look at C here, this is my ordinate pair. I have 7, negative 4 and 7, 13. And if you look at this thing here, same idea for me, I keep it consistent. The first item is my x1, y1. My second item is x2, y2. So if I plug it in, I have a negative 13 minus a negative 4. Make sure you put in that minus. For this problem, is doesn't make a difference, but keep a habit. Ask yourself, what is the value? The formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. What is the value of the individual x and the individual y? Okay, and my x2 will be 7 minus my x1 is 7. And if you look at this item here, we can see that double negative become a positive, which is negative 13 added to 4, even though we say negative added to 4 because one of them is negative, the other one positive, we have to subtract. But regardless of what the numerator is, everybody see that the denominator 7 minus 7 is equal to 0. And if I mentioned this earlier, if the denominator is equal to 0, what happened? Well, if the denominator is equal to 0, then this is a undefined. The reason is we cannot take a number and divide it by 0. There is no way you can do that. If we have some number divided by 0, we cannot divide it. And if we cannot divide it for now, we say it's undefined. Okay. And if your denominator is equal to 0, this is undefined, and this is why it's an undefined slope. And later on, you will see that if you were to graph this 2 point, if you were to graph this 2 point, 7 tell you to go to the right 7 slot, negative 4 tell you go down 4 slot. And 7 tell you go to the right 7, and negative 13, as you can see, is just a straight line at x equal to 7. Okay, but regardless, looking at this thing here, question on why this is an undefined slope. And lastly, let's say if I have 6 comma negative 11, 3 comma negative 11. If you were to plug in, you will have negative 11 minus a negative 11 and 3 minus 6. Regardless of what you have, a negative 11 plus 11, that thing will give you 0. And if you have 0 on the numerator, the difference between 0 on the numerator versus 0 on the denominator, 0 on the numerator, 0, if you have $0 and divide it to 3 people, each person will get a whopper $0. So if 0 on the numerator, you can divide, because 0 divide by whatever number you just get, each of them will get 0, right? But 0 on the denominator, we cannot divide it, okay? If you're using the money analogy, if we have $9 on the street and nobody find it, what happened? Well, the $9 is still on somewhere on the street, right? So again, if $0 divided to 3, each of them get $0. But if we have $3 on the street and no one find it, what happened to that $3? Well, it's still on the street somewhere. Okay, so just think in terms of the 0 numerator, this will be 0, and if it's 0, this will give me a 0 slope. Okay, so the other thing I want to make, take a look at this item here. When your x value is the same, when sometimes if you do a lot of this thing here, you will see the consistency of the problem. So if you recognize that you have a same value for x, if your x value is the same, then this will be an undefined slope, ladies and gentlemen, because your denominator is the same. When they subtract them out, this will give you 0 on the denominator. That will be undefined. And how can it be a 0 slope? Well, if your y value is the same, if your y value is the same, then this will be a 0 slope, because your y value is your numerator, and if they are the same, they will cancel each other out, because we have to subtract them. And if they are the same, we subtract them, which is they cancel out. 5 take away 5, 0. So if the y is the same, it's a 0 slope. If the x is the same, it's an undefined slope. Okay. So question in terms of this 4 problem, and I give you this 4 problem just to show you that no matter what point they give you, you can always plug into your formula. You can always plug in your formula, and then you can find the slope. Okay. So question here with this 4 problem here in terms of the positive slope, a negative slope, an undefined slope, and a 0 slope in terms of the number rather than looking at the graph. Now, the next problem, if you don't have question, is what happened? What happened if they give you the graph and they ask you to find the slope of this line? So what happened if they give you this graph and they give you this graph? First of all, hopefully you guys recognize that this graph right here is a negative slope, right? From left to right, right? Corresponding to our blue line earlier. From left to right, we decrease, right? You're skiing down the hill. So from left to right is a negative slope. You're going down, right? So how would you find the slope if they just give you the graph like this? Well, if they give you the graph, this is one way you can do is identify 2 points. So in this case, I identify the 2 point, which is -3, 8. Agree? Everybody see that this first point is -3 on the x, 8 on the y, which is -3, 8. And my second point will be 4, 2. So if you want to, this is one way to do it, is identify the point, any point that you can see, identify them. And the first point you see is your x1, y1. The second point you see is your x2, y2. And if you're using the formula, which is 2 minus 8, my y2, which is 2, minus my y1, which is 8, divided by 4 minus a -3. And 2 minus 8 will give me -6. And a double negative will give me a positive, which is 4 plus 3 will give me 7. So one way is you can identify the point. Everybody see that I identified this 2 point. And reminder, I know that this is the careless mistake a lot of my students do is they saw this 8 very close to the point. They are tentative, write 8, -3. But remember, when you identify the point, you need to identify the horizontal item, which is your x-axis first, and then your vertical item, which is your y-axis. So make sure that x comes before y. So in this case, you have to identify a -3, 8, vice versa, 4, 2. So if you identify them, this is what you need to do is you identify the x value, the y value. That's one way to do it, which is identify the point, plug in your formula, the formula we have before, y2 minus y1, divide by x2 minus x1. Or this is the other way we can do in terms of the rises over the run. So if they give you this graph and they give you the 2 point and they ask you to find the slope of the line, this is what you need to ask yourself is from the first point, from left to right, for me, from left to right, whatever point I see first from left to right, that's my first point. And the second point I see from left to right will be my second point. So basically, this is what you want to ask yourself is from left to right, at the first point, how can I travel from the first point to the second point? Do you agree that from the first point, I need to go down 6 steps? I need to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, which is I go down 6. We can see that the rise, instead of rise, if you go up is positive, because we go down is negative. Because I go down from my first point, I need to go down 6 slots. That is why my numerator is negative. And the run, because clearly my dog point is down here. It's not here. If it's here, I'm done, right? I stay there, which is 0. But because I need to run, which is in this case, I run to the right, and how many steps, how many items do I need to take from this item to my next point? As you can see, I run 7 steps, and because I run to the right, it's +7, and it's the same idea as before. No matter how you do it, if you plug in the formula, you still get -6 over 7. Or if you look at this item, you ask yourself from the first point, do I travel up? If I travel up, it's a positive. If I travel down, it's negative. Once I travel up or down, do I travel to the left or do I travel to the right? So looking at this item, everybody see that we can ask ourselves how many steps we take from the first point we see from the left to the second point we see from the right, and it's the same as plug into your formula. 2 minus 8 will give me -6. A negative and negative become a positive, which is 4 plus 3 will give me 7. Regardless of how you do it, you have negative 6 over 7, which is a negative slope. We identify a negative slope in beginning, from left to right, decreasing. So question with this problem or the first item A here. Similarly, right? Similarly, B, if you look at B, same idea. They give you this line, and we can see that from left to right, we know that we have an idea that from left to right, that this is a positive slope, right? We're climbing up the incline. And from left to right, we're climbing up the incline is a positive slope. And how or what is a slope that we have? So we can take the approach that rise over run. Do you agree that I need to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. From the bottom to the top, I need to take 6 steps. Unlike on the A, because I go up, it's a positive 6, right? On A, because I go down, it's a negative slope, negative number, okay? Do I stop here? Well, my destination is the second black dot, and my black dot is nowhere to be found here. So as you can see, I have 6 going up because it's positive. And because I go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slot, because I go to the right 5, it's a positive 5. And I see that my slope will be positive 6 over positive 5. And again, positive is will be a positive slope. So that's what you need to ask yourself is if they give you 2 points from the left to the right, how did I get from the first point to the second point? If I go up, I will have a positive number. If I go to the right, I will have a positive number. If I go down and to the left, I will have a negative number, okay? You know, this is one way, and hopefully you guys see that using the steps, right? How many times did you jump? How many steps did you take? Is the same as you identify your point and plug into your formula. You know, if I identify my point, everybody see right here, this is -4, -6. That's the first point I have, -4, -6. The second point is 1, 0. And if I plug in 0 minus a negative, negative become a positive. 0 minus a plus 6 will give me 6. 1 negative and negative positive, 1 plus 4 will give me 5. So regardless or disregard of what you use, it doesn't matter which method you use, you still derive. Hopefully you still derive to the same conclusion. And if you keep on going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will see that is on the same line. Okay, this thing is a little bit off, but imagine that the point is right here. Okay, question of how to find the slope by plug into your formula, or how to find the slope by moving from one dot to the next. Rise over run. Any question here? Again, it's always rise over run. It's always up or down first, and then left or right. Okay. But if you keep it consistent, like for me, the first point on the left, I start at that point, then it will either be up or down to the right, right? Don't start, you can. It's not wrong if whoever say, what happened if I start at this point? What happened if you start at this point right here? Well, if you start at this point, you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -6, and because you go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have -6 over -5, negative over negative is still a positive 6, 5. So doesn't matter if you go, you just, to keep it consistent, whatever I see on the left first, I would use that as my first point, and then I move it from there. Okay. All right, question here. If you don't have question, let's take a look at the next item we have. And this is the last item that we have for today. But this item have many other items connect to it. So we will finish, we will end up with parallel and perpendicular. But before we do that, the slope-intercept form. And many of you, if you came out from high school, many of you remember this slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form just tell you that for any equation, whatever the equation of the line is, if it's in this item, y equal mx plus b. If we have y equal mx plus b, then this is the slope-intercept form. And what is the unique thing about this slope-intercept form? Well, the unique thing is anytime if you have this form, anything in front of the x, anything in front of the x here will be your slope. The m is your slope. So anything in front of the x will be your slope. And the b will be your y-intercept. So if we see the b right here, will be your y-intercept in that case, okay? So looking at this item here, the m is the slope and the b will be the y-intercept, which is 0, comma b. So if I give you this equation, y equal to 2/3 x plus 7, and I ask you to identify me what is the slope and identify me what is the y-intercept, you can clearly see that 2/3 will be your slope. And that is a positive slope. And 5 the 7 will be your y-intercept, or sometimes you have to write in the order pair, which is 0, comma 7. Okay, so if it's in this form, y equal to some number x plus some number, then it's easy to identify your x and your slope and your y-intercept. Everybody agree on that? So before we give you the other form, let's identify the two definitions we will have, and we will do them all together. The next thing I want to point out is the parallel line. How can two lines be parallel to each other? Well, if the two lines never intersect, if we have this line and this line, as you can see, they keep on going side by side and they will never cross in each other. And if they don't cross in each other, we call that they are parallel. And in order for them to be parallel, in order for two lines to be parallel or called parallel line, the two lines will have to have the same slope. As you can see, this item here, they both negative slope, which is, let's say I go down 1, 2 over 1, 2, 3. So down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3. This item, same thing go. I keep on go down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3. They both have the same slope, and they keep on go down 3, down 3, down 3. You can see that this item here, they will never cross in each other. So in short, in order for two lines to be parallel, they need to have the same exact slope. And if the two lines have the same exact slope, we call them parallel lines, okay? And how can it, for us, how can the two lines be perpendicular? To be a perpendicular line, the definition is basically if the two lines crosses at a right triangle. If you look at this item here, they crossing at the right triangle or a 90-degree 90-degree angle here. For all of this item is a 90-degree angle, and if they cross at the 90-degree angle, we say that they are perpendicular. You're probably a little bit confused in terms of say, wait, why it cannot be vertical, what does it mean, non-vertical line? Basically tell you that your line cannot be this line here. Your line cannot be this vertical, because remember, if we have a vertical line, this is a undefined slope. And to challenge you guys, or not challenge you guys, but in order to be perpendicular to a vertical line, you need to have a zero slope, which is a horizontal line, because this would be a 90-degree angle right here. This would be a 90-degree angle that we have here, okay? But to be in short, to be in short for us, in order to be a perpendicular, in order to the two lines to be perpendicular like a green item we have here, the two lines have to have an opposite reciprocal slope. So whatever your slope is have to be opposite, meaning if your slope is positive, it have to be negative, and the reciprocal, if it's 1/3, then it have to be 3/1. Or if it's 2/3 right here, if it's 2/3, if I have one line and the slope is 2/3 and I want to find a perpendicular line to this item, then the perpendicular slope will be -3/2. It has to be a negative reciprocal, or in the case of opposite reciprocal. Okay, so in order to be perpendicular, it has to be opposite reciprocal. In order to be parallel, it has to be exactly the same. So in order to be parallel to this line, the next line, whatever the line that I have next, have to be 2/3 x, whatever the number, I don't care. So as long as they have the same line, parallel. If they have opposite reciprocal, meaning in this case, in order to be a perpendicular to that item, it has to be -3/2. Okay, so if this is my line, in order to be perpendicular, it has to be opposite, which is because it's right here is positive, I have to have a negative. 2/3, the reciprocal will be 3/2. Those, in short, is the definition of parallel versus perpendicular. Okay. So question with how to identify the slope. If I give you some equation, and how can two lines be parallel versus two lines be perpendicular? Let's take a look at this. Let's do one example so at least you have an idea. So let's say if we have this item, and we will pick up on this tomorrow. If we have this item here, example 3, and they ask you to identify the slope, identify two slope and the y-intercept for both lines, and determine whether both lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So you can see right here for A, we have line 1. So copy this down for me. 3x minus 4y equal to 12. And line 2, ax plus 6y equal to 12. So if you look at this thing here from your hindsight, hopefully we cannot know, we don't know if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And looking at this thing here, we don't know what is the slope and what is the y-intercept, okay? So if we were to have this item, how do we identify the slope of the line? So let's take a look at this here. And if you look at this item, if you look at this item here, this is what I have, which is my line 1 is 3x minus 4y equal to 12. And my line 2 is ax plus 6y equal to 12. So in order for us to know what is the slope and what is the y-intercept, we need to get it in this form. We need to get it in this form, y equal to mx plus b. Because whatever the number in front of my x, this is my slope. And whatever my b is, this is the y-intercept, right? So how can your goal is this, ladies and gentlemen, how can you take this item and convert to this item here, the slope-intercept form? And hopefully you guys see that all we need to do is get y by itself, right? This is all we need to do is we have 3x minus 4y equal to 12. My goal, as always, because the slope-intercept form, y is by itself. So basically this is what we go back to chapter 2.5. We need to solve for y. So how do I solve for y? We need to get rid of this 3x. How do I get the 3x to that side? I need to subtract 3x. And if you see this item, we have a negative 4y equal to, what is 12 minus 3x? Well, 12 minus 3x is basically 12 minus 3x, because again, 12 and 3x are just 12 and 3x. They are unlike term, and if they are unlike term, there's nothing I can do. Now, once I have that, how do I get rid of this negative 4? To get rid of the negative 4, everybody agree that I need to divide by negative 4, because negative 4 over negative 4, they cancel out. And if I divide by negative 4, this is the one thing that you need to know, or one thing that you need to tell yourself, is you need to divide by every single term. Here, which is this item cancels out. You have the 12, you need to divide that by negative 4. You have a negative 3, you need to divide that by a negative 4. So my new item, once I divide by a negative 4, you can see that y is equal to negative 4 going to 12 will give me a negative 3, and a negative will give me a positive 3, 4 x. Everybody see that my y is by itself. And what is the number? Is the number in front of the x? The number in front of x is 3 over 4. And reminder that 3 over 4 is equal to m, or this is your slope. The constant 3. The constant 3, this is your y-intercept. So in order for you to identify the y-intercept or the slope, then you have to get y by itself. And that is your slope-intercept form. And you know, some of you guys say, wait a minute, Mr. Tran, this item and this item up here are not the same, because the reason is I put the x in the back. If you want to, you can say y equal to 3 over 4x minus 3. So if you move it, the x in front, you will see that it's in the same form as the y equal mx plus b, okay? So first of all, question in how did I took this item, 3x minus 4y equal to 12, how did I get that item to become y equal to 4x minus 3? And if you look at this item, in order to be parallel, my next equation, this equation right here, the slope have to be 3, 4. If the next equation, if the slope is 4, then I know that this parallel line. If the next equation, the slope is negative 4 over 3, which is the opposite reciprocal, if it's an opposite reciprocal, then I know that they are perpendicular. If they are not the same and they are not opposite and reciprocal, then they are neither. Okay, those are the 3 options. It's either parallel, they have the same slope, opposite reciprocal if they are perpendicular, and if they are not either one, then they are neither. So let me move this item so that we have quite a few room. Let me rewrite this. Ax plus 6y equal to 12. So our goal is we need to get y by, same idea, to get y by itself. I want to move my ax over, and to move my ax over, do you agree that I subtract ax? And if I subtract ax, this is what I have. I have 6y equal to, make it easy, 12 minus ax. Again, if you want to put negative ax plus 12, that is fine. Because I say 12 ax, I put 12 minus ax. Now, how do you get rid of this 6? To get rid of the 6, do you agree that we need to divide by 6? Because 6 over 6, they cancel out. My y is by itself. That's what I want, right? And look at this item here, 6 going to 12, that will give me 2. And what does 8 divide by 6? Well, 8 divided by 6, do you agree that this will give me, again, my negative still the same. 8 divided by 6, I can reduce this by 2. 2 going to 8 is 4 times, and 2 going to 6 is 3 times. And if you see this item and you want to convert to the item we have in the set, y is equal to 4/3 x plus 2. So if you want to move the x in front, that's fine. It doesn't change anything. Just basically, wherever the x go, the negative have to go with it. So we have a negative 3/4. So if you look at this item, I have a negative 3/4. This is my slope, negative 3/4. I mean 4/3, not 3/4. Negative 4/3. Do you agree that this is the opposite, because over here is positive, over here is positive, and this is negative? They are opposite, and it's a reciprocal because 3/4 is of 4/3, or vice versa, is reciprocal of 3/4. And because they have an opposite reciprocal, everybody see that line one. Line one, I did all of this item, and I have my slope is equal to 3/4. That is my line one. My slope, let me say M1, that's the slope of line one, is 3/4. And my M2, the slope for line two, is negative 4/3. As you can see, these two items, they are opposite and reciprocal each other. So because they are opposite and reciprocal of each other, we say that they are perpendicular to each other. So looking at this item, my example A, they are perpendicular. They are, and to identify this, I get my y by itself. If I get my y by itself, I can identify the slope easily. And because whatever number in front of my y, x, is my slope. So if you were to encounter this item, here for A or B, for C, the first objective is you need to get y by itself. Get y equal mx plus b. And once you get y equal mx plus b, then you can identify your slope, identify your y-intercept. And if your slope is the same, they are parallel. If your slope are opposite and reciprocal to each other, they are perpendicular. If they are not one or the other, they are neither. Okay. So question here in terms of this problem A that we have.